Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Soft Girl Strong Mind. Okay, every person of color has a vivid memory of them translating something for their parents. I distinctly remember having to translate tax documents, insurance forms, school paperwork, things that I didn't even understand translating. See, every kid growing up in an immigrant household has several jobs: a translator, a school paperwork manager, doctor appointment translator, babysitter. And the funny thing is, when you grow up in this role, you don't realize how unusual this actually is. It just feels normal. So, school paperwork or those packages that they give you at the beginning of the school year, permission slips, emergency contact, lunch forms. I was not only responsible to give it to my parents, but I was responsible to read it and explain it to them. Even at parent teacher conference, I had to be the one translating. And I was always in this weird position because, you're the one translating what your teacher is telling your parents. So I was always caught between, should I tell them the full truth or should I soften it a little bit? And then there was summer. Most kids go to summer camp or stay away camp, or they hang out with their friends all summer, maybe get their first part-time job. But let me tell you, in immigrant households, summer meant taking care of your younger siblings, and everybody knows the famous phrase, no le abras la puerta a nadie. And when you start listing all the things you were responsible as a kid, translating, mediating, taking care of your siblings, managing paperwork, explaining things to your parents, all of this sounds like a job title. And I recently learned that in psychology, this is actually called instrumental parentification. It's when kids manage adult responsibility, which is why a lot of eldest daughters grow up so fast. And if you're an eldest daughter, I know for a fact a bunch of people have probably told you you're so mature for your age. Well, this is why, honey. And guess what? As you get older, the responsibilities don't diminish, they evolve. So instead of translating documents, you're now translating emotions. See, when I became an adult, I guess, now I was old enough to understand family dynamics, understand family gossip, understand family problems. So then my parents started coming to me to vent about each other. So my mom would come to me to vent about dad. And I would be like, yeah, you know what? He does do that. That's so not right. And my dad would vent to me about my mom. And I would be like, you know what? Yeah, mom is kind of like that, huh? And I'm in this weird in between where both my parents are talking shit about each other to me. And it wasn't just about them. Like, they would talk to me about work and, the stresses in their life. And as a kid, you always want your parents to feel good and be happy. So I would always personalize their conflicts or their problems and try to solve it for them. And that's not a responsibility that I should be having. But because I love and care for them, it's a responsibility that I took up. Also, as I got older, my parents started to want to use me as a mediator. Like, if they were arguing, they would want me to be the third party. And at first I loved the idea of it because I was like, okay, I could probably prevent problems, or maybe I can act as a family therapist and we can resolve their conflicts. And let me tell you, it did not go like that at all. Not one bit. It was just both of them screaming at each other with me in the middle. And even if I did try to mediate and try to calm both parties, it did not work. And I just remember feeling like a helpless little kid in between their parents fighting and yelling at each other. And in psychology, this has another term. It's called emotional parentification. So the instrumental parentification, where you're responsible for translating, babysitting, and managing paperwork, transforms into emotional parentification, where now you're mediating family conflict and trying to keep the peace, trying to make sure everyone gets along. And I feel like so many kids from immigrant households go through this. There's so many jokes online about translating for your parents or mediating family conflict, but I don't think we actually sit down and think about how this affects us psychologically. For example, this hyper responsibility for your siblings and your parents can become adult patterns of being overworked, people pleasing, and having difficulty relaxing. And as the oldest daughter in an immigrant household, I feel like your identity revolves around you being useful. It can make adulthood confusing, especially when you are trying to explore your own personal desires. And this identity of being useful makes it really hard for oldest daughters to ask for help. Not only are oldest daughters hyper responsible, but they're also hyper independent, self reliant, and high achievers because they don't like to ask for help. And I feel like the biggest thing is it makes you feel guilty when you do try to set boundaries or when you try to put yourself first, even when you move out from your parents' house because you feel like you're abandoning your role. And again, this doesn't mean our parents are bad. You know, they were doing the best they could navigating a new world. But understanding these patterns and where they come from can better help us understand ourselves. Okay, be sure to comment down below if any of this resonated with you. And next episode, I will be talking about something a little bit more personal and a little bit more vulnerable. I'm not sure if every eldest daughter goes through this, but I remember it being a very big part of my childhood, and that is not having a voice for myself. So definitely go check out that episode, and I will see you guys next time.